Hi guys, what's up? Welcome back to another video. Today you join me in the 2021 Abarth 595 Comp. A hot hatch with a difference. A lot of Italian flair on this one. Basically a big brutal cousin of the Fiat 500. A kind of compromised car, but I'm here to find out today if it's worth you getting one. And I'm going to start off just by hooning it a little bit to see exactly what it's all about. See how she fares around this roundabout then. Oh, a bit of understeer. Oh, listen to that exhaust. Yeah, it picks up nicely. So about this car then, let's put it into high gear and stop messing about for a second. It's effectively a Fiat 500, right, underneath. That's what this car is, and you can kind of feel that in the quality of the overall package. So let's start off with a few little negative, nitpicky bits. It is still a Fiat 500. It's still kind of cramped inside. I'm 6 foot and I've got loads of headroom, which is cool. But in terms of the seating position, it's not the most ergonomic. You get these Saybelt racing bucket seats, which are great. And you can even get a carbon option, which is really cool. And they are proper bucket seats as well. They really hug you in. They've got a really firm, supportive back to them. And the only adjustment is tilt back and forward. You can't even adjust the height on a lot of these 595s and the 695s. Which is a real pain in terms of your driving position. You've got tilt on the steering wheel, but no telescope, so it can be a little bit of a pain to get yourself in a comfortable driving position. And whilst this seat is really nice in terms of supporting you around when you're chucking it around, on a really long journey, I'm not sure it'll be the most comfortable thing to live with. But that's the thing with this, it is a compromise. It's designed to have that Italian flair. It's designed to be a little bit more edgy. It's a bit like driving an old Ferrari. Like, you know it's a little bit clunky and you know it's a bit raw and you know it could go wrong for you, but there's just something about it. It's just passionate and it's just got this energy about it, and you just kick down a gear and you listen to the exhaust open up and you see the turbo gauge chasing across the meter, and there's just something really exciting about it compared to some of its other rivals. But yeah, in terms of long journeys, I don't think I'd be particularly happy with this car, just on the basis that, you know, it's firm in here, and the suspension is firm but not too unforgiving. It's definitely obviously set up for kind of track use and sporty driving, but I don't think you'd be too disappointed with it day to day if you're just zipping around town. But on a really, really long journey, I think you'd probably find it kind of irritating, especially with this firm seat. I can see myself getting out of this after an hour or two's drive feeling quite sore and achy, but sitting here right now and just pottering around town and chucking it around, it's really good. But yeah, in terms of like just opening and shutting the door, it all feels a little bit cheap, and some of the materials in here, even up here, is all scratchy, horrible plastic, and obviously the same continues down the bottom. So there's definitely some compromises to be had in terms of the interior quality, but if you know what you're getting into, then that's to be expected, to be honest. In terms of space, apart from the headroom, rear seat space, not particularly ideal. I'd class this as like a 2+2 really. You can fit some kids back there or some very small adults that don't have too chunky a thigh, but in terms of kind of like, you know, your average size adults back there, they wouldn't be comfortable for long journeys at all. It's just ideal for squishing them in the back to take them down the road. But it's nice that they have rear seats in here for such a small compact car. And also the boot space, even though it doesn't look too generous, it's not bad. I've put my bag in there just for scale, but you could easily fit a little bit of luggage in there, take out the ridiculous parcel shelf that seems completely pointless, and fold the seats down. And whilst you don't obviously get a flat loading bay, you could still fit an okay amount of stuff in there. Don't expect to fit your 65-inch telly in, but you know, a couple of suitcases for going on a trip, absolutely fine. Again, quality-wise, sound insulation in here isn't too great, but that's almost a blessing because I've got it in sport mode right now and I'm listening to this Monza exhaust, and there's something really nice about hearing the burbles and the pops and crackles come through. Even now, driving along at 45 mile an hour, you can hear there's a bit of drone. We are in sport mode though, so if you close off those valves, you can hear straight away it does calm it down a little bit, but it's definitely a bit of a raw experience, and you can kind of tell with some of the exposed metalwork of the car here. This one is finished in adrenaline green, which is an absolutely naughty spec, I would say. These wheels are diamond cut, which do look pretty cool. Personally, not my favourite spec of this car. Like, I think that the other wheels that they do for this do look a little bit better, like the Trofeo models and stuff like that. But they still look really good. And yeah, this green, it's like a highlighter yellow almost. It gets a load of attention wherever you go, which is good fun. It's just a nice colour. I think if you get one of these in like black or white or something boring, it's not too great. I think you've either got to get the grey, the sort of the primer grey, a bit like Nardo grey, I'm not sure on the particular colour name, or this adrenaline green, to really get the best of the experience. The owner of this car, Joe, who's kindly letting it to me today, has even gone to the effect of colour matching the air freshener, which is a really nice touch and makes for some nice photos. So yeah, it's good fun. And it's something that kind of adds to the layeriness of this car as well, which is exactly what it's all about. That's the whole point in this car. It's not to be a sensible cruiser, it's to have fun, and that's exactly what it is. In terms of your other creature comforts, in this one we've got automatic climate control, happy days. You've also got a pretty decent infotainment system. It's not the biggest in the world, but it is very responsive even compared to some of the rivals, and it does everything you need it to. It's got Apple CarPlay, which is good. The screen size is okay, and it's also got a nice matte finish to it too, which makes it really easy to use in bright conditions. In front of me I've got a massive central dial which has like a screen on it which shows the rev counter, shows the temperature and the fuel, which works really nicely. It shows all the information that you might need. You've got like your trip computer on there, and if you're using the inbuilt navigation, it shows you directions on there as well. Once you pop it over into sport mode, it comes up with the G meter and makes the speed readout nice and large, which is nice. And up here you have a pod dash mounted turbo gauge, which is really nice. It comes up with sport illuminated when you're in sport mode. As soon as you hit that enticing sport button mode on the dash, you hear the exhaust flap open. It makes a massive difference to this Monza exhaust that's fitted to the car, and you start to get that really raw sound. You can really enjoy watching the turbo gauge bounce around as you pin it down some country lanes. And as I say, that's what this car is all about. It's designed for those fun moments and just to unleash it where you can. Sound system is just average. It's not anything exciting, and it doesn't really help that obviously you've got these really cheap plastic door cards. It can distort a little bit, but the things that you have to touch feel quite nice. You've got this rounded metal gear lever which is on the dash mounted, which again is a bit odd, but if you're used to a Honda Civic or something then you'll be used to that. It feels nice in the hand. And then you've got this nice steering wheel. It's chunky, it's large, it's got this Alcantara and carbon fibre on it, which feels really good in the hand. And you've got some basic controls for your cool functionality, and bits and bobs like that. Nothing too fancy, but it gets the job done. Again, you can kind of see the essentials that you need, but I'm just not too happy about the driving position. I think it's okay, but I just can't quite get it how I like it as a slightly taller person, and I think I would struggle in like a really long journey. But just driving it today, it feels absolutely fine, and these seats are impressive. Obviously not comfortable in kind of the traditional plush sense, but very, very firm and supportive, which is nice on my back when we're giving it a blast. So what I'm going to do now is kind of stop rambling about all of the day-to-day practicalities and actually take this thing for a little hoon, because that's exactly what we're here for, right? The only thing is, in terms of like rivals, I would say realistically in this price bracket, because these can be had reasonably cheaply, especially if you're financing, you know, far less than £200 a month for one of these on finance, and you know, a lot of people will be enticed by that, especially younger drivers. But yeah, I think if you want something that is kind of a little bit more sensible to live with, but in the similar ballpark, then you're probably looking at a Volkswagen Up GTI. It's just a little bit of a more engaging driving experience. It feels a little bit more sturdy than this, being a sort of Volkswagen Audi group car. The other option is a Fiesta ST, the kind of the all singing, all dancing, fabled hot hatch. That's kind of the does it everything car. Insurance on those is a little bit cheeky here in the UK at the moment because they get pinched all the time, but you know, it's a really good car. It's got loads of modding potential. The setup from factory is really nice. They're really efficient, more so than this. This one's been averaging around 40 mpg, which isn't too far off the 42 quoted, but obviously that's not still great in comparison to some of the other hatches of this class. but you know, for what it is, it's not too bad. It's still going to be quite affordable to run and to fill up. A Fiesta ST is going to be easier to live with. It's a little bit more plush inside, it's a little bit more practical, it's a little bit larger, you can actually fit people in the back, the luggage space is going to be better. Thing is though, about your Fiesta ST, it doesn't come standard with coney dampers like this does, which really make it feel nice on a twisty road. It doesn't come standard with a Monza exhaust like this does, which really opens up and pops and crackles when you want it to, but then when you close off the valves, goes back to sensible. It also doesn't have Brembo brakes as standard that are to this degree. You know, these ones are quite large, they're 4 pots, they're vented, perforated. You can get kind of options on the higher end hot hatches of stuff like this, but these are just standard on this comp model. And as I say, there's been loads of different Abarths and 595s and the 695 and the Trofeo, and there's a few other special editions. There's a lot to choose from, but yeah, overall, I think these kind of higher end ones like the Comp and the Trofeo, these are the ones to look at. There's not much price difference now, and you know, you want to be looking at one of these newer models to get your new Apple CarPlay and the facelift. But yeah, we're on this road now. This particular model has about 180 brake horsepower from the 1.4 turbo. It's got a Garrett turbo on it, really nice and responsive, and it does actually encourage you to ring it out to the high RPMs as well, which is interesting because a lot of these cars don't. But you can see on this, like low down, the turbo doesn't really kick in. It really starts to build boost as you go on, which is kind of more typical of larger displacement cars with larger turbos, which makes this quite nice. For example, in my Audi TT, all the turbo is low down, it runs out of legs, but this one, it encourages you to ring it out. You know, 4.5 RPM, 4.5K, it just all of a sudden, the boost kicks in and you start getting it to kick around at the front, and it's really engaging and interesting. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange experience, to be honest. It's like you kind of expect it to all be low down, but it's not, and it really encourages you to really take it to the limit, and I really enjoy that. It's good fun. The steering feels really, really heavy. It's quite heavy anyway in comparison to your other hot hatches. It feels quite heavy, but I like that in a way. It's quite engaging, but it is a little bit annoying sometimes in town. But out here, it feels nice, and sometimes it does feel as though it takes a second to respond. You know, if I kind of like just get up to speed, give it a little, yeah, it feels like sometimes the chassis takes a second to catch up, but it keeps you on your toes. The gear shift as well is quite nice. It's not quite a short throw as I would like, potentially, but it's not horrible at all. It feels quite slick, and the pedal placement is quite close together, which I thought I wasn't going to like, but it does enable some nice sort of heel toe action. And it's not too bad as long as you're not wearing shoes that are too clumsy. Right, let's I want to try and I keep going there for the window switches. The window switches are in the middle, which is slightly annoying. Let's just crack the windows a tiny bit just to try and get some sound. I'm going to kick down a gear. I've got quite good visibility here, so let's open her up. Suspension feels quite firm. Those Brembos are impressive as well. Yeah, suspension feels nice and compliant on a twisty road like this, and the weighty steering makes for a nice experience. And you kind of know just when to let off to get that induction sound as well, and to get the kind of the raspiness from the exhaust. But when you turn it back into normal mode, if I switch now to the standard driving mode, and I kick down a gear and I do that same sort of acceleration, it's still sporty sounding, but it doesn't sound too ruckus. Whereas if I now put it back into sport mode, the valves open up. Yeah, it's good fun. It's there when you want it, you know? You get a little bit of kind of torque steer as it gets unsettled when you're off the line. Even though the chassis isn't the most compliant in comparison to, say, a Fiesta ST or something like that, you still feel as though you're getting a good driving experience out of it, and it is good fun. I just question whether it's the car to buy if you're commuting or anything like that. Like, I just don't think it's a sensible option for that, because you're going to get fed up with it. You're going to get frustrated with its foibles and, you know, these firm seats and the kind of the road noise and the tyre noise and stuff like that, it's just not very refined. I mean, it's a popular car amongst younger drivers, I suppose, but I personally would have a Fiesta ST just because it feels more compliant, it feels more engaging, and you know, it's not going to be too far off this in terms of cost, but just be a more comfortable vehicle. That being said, I also would probably look at these in jealousy every time I saw one, just because they're so different. Oh, I can feel the torque steer, which is good fun, you know, for front wheel drive. And listen to that raspiness of that exhaust. Oh, braking, so good. You'd expect it to be with these big 4-pot brakes on this little tiny car. It only weighs just over a ton, around 1,040 kilos, this model. And whilst it does feel like the heavy steering does give it a bit of an illusion that it is actually something a little bit heavier, which I don't mind, to be fair. I'm sure you can hear all sorts of weird creaks and rattles from in here. That's the downside of that Fiat 500 quality. The other thing that I didn't mention is that you can get this with an automatic transmission, but it's an automated manual, and it's actually 2.2 of a second slower to 60. This one's 6.7 seconds, that's 6.9. And normally it's the other way around. Normally the auto is quicker to 60, and that goes to show what a sloppy box it is. I have driven one. I would not recommend it. It just feels a bit like one of the old like automated manuals from sort of Mercedes and Smart. They're not great, and yeah, I would avoid personally. So there we go then, the Abarth 595, specifically the comp model, which is one of the tastiest of all of them, and I would definitely consider one of these if you're looking for a hot hatch. It's definitely a little bit raw in comparison to other cars, so I wouldn't recommend it if you're the sort of person who does lots and lots of driving. But if you're looking for something to zip around town, just to show off in and just have a laugh and enjoy the driving experience, whilst this probably isn't the best option in terms of, like, you know, if you were hooning around the track, I'm sure a Fiesta ST would probably do better. But the experience in this is just something special. It's something interesting. And you always feel like it's an occasion when you're driving it. It's just got that Italian flair. Like I say, it feels a bit like driving an old sports car. You just get that experience without it being too harsh, because in this you know that it's going to be reliable, it's going to be cheap to run. So it's not something you really have to worry about too much. So yeah, an interesting one. Would I buy one? No, I wouldn't. And the reason being just because I couldn't live with it day to day. If you want any of my other hot hatch reviews, I've got quite a few on my channel, so check that out in the link below. If you want to have a look into any Abarth lease deals, I've got that link in the description as well. Again, thanks to Joe for letting me drive the car for the day and trusting me with his own personal car. I've really enjoyed having it, and I highly encourage that if you've never tried one, give it a go. You might just love it. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.